Welcome to my podcast. This is Beth Jones. I'm so glad to have you here today, and I'm also very excited about my guest today, Diana Journey. Hello, Diana.
Hey, Beth, thank you for inviting me. I look forward to this.
Well, thank you for coming. It's such an honor to have you on this podcast today. And I just want to share a bit about Diana before she dives in. Diana Journey is a victory coach and founder of Journey to Victory, where she helps women and couples heal, grow, and reclaim joy after life's hardest seasons. And with deep compassion and personal wisdom, Diana walks alongside her clients navigating betrayal, grief, or disconnection, guiding them toward lasting transformation. And together with her husband, Tim, she leads marriage coaching programs that help countless couples to rebuild trust, connection, and purpose. And Diana's work is grounded in her faith and fueled by the belief that even in the most broken moments, victory is still possible. And I love that. I love that,
Mm.
Diana. And in Matthew 19:26, Jesus said, with God, all things are possible. And I truly believe that. So, what I want you to do, Diane, is just introduce a little bit about yourself and then dive right in. I'm going to be quiet, hand you over the mic, and then at the end, we'll wrap up.
Okay, thank you, Beth. So I'm Diana Journey, and I am a wife and a mother of four, and am blessed with 10 grandchildren now. So that is my legacy, my grandchildren, my family, and so part of my story, which I will share, is how I became unstoppable in the threat that was on my marriage. So, and just a little more about me is that I love doing what I do. I love being a coach. I actually started out my college career in psychology, and I feel like then years later, when I became certified as a coach, I became full circle. So I feel like my life is now full circle. So, to me, unstoppable doesn't mean that we didn't or I didn't get knocked down, because I did. It meant that I chose to get back up. It means to me that as faith is my anchor and purpose is my guide, that I keep going. I don't give up. So for me, I got to choose being unstoppable when I learned of my husband's affair. And that was the biggest trial I've ever faced, to be honest. And, I had a choice at that time. I could become bitter or I could become better. And it was a process that I had to work through. And I work with a lot of clients who are going through betrayal or have gone through it. And it is something that really they're all faced with. Am I going to be better after this, or am I going to be bitter? And, you look at the two different choices. Being bitter is not a pleasant way to live.
Mhm.
It's not pleasant for the people around you. And you're not pleasant. You're not happy with yourself. So I couldn't choose that. I had to choose better. And so better meant that I needed to do work, and I needed to lay down a lot of my hurt, my pain, and my anger at the feet of Jesus, which in itself is not easy either, because we're only human and we go into self protect. I went into self protect. How can I self protect myself here? How can I fix this that happened? And that's where I was for quite a few months. But there was just one day when it hit me, and that was the day I like to say was the biggest step in my journey, because that was the day that I really saw God come forward and bless me that I was going to be okay. And it was on that day that I truly surrendered. And if I look back in my journals, and believe me, I got lots of journals about that time in my life, it's like I surrendered probably several times a day. Lord, I can't do this. Take it from me. I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm in pain, take it from me. And I picked it right back up, trying to control it, trying to control my husband, trying to fix it all. And this one day in particular, I laid it down. And the difference was just huge from surrendering in my journal and then picking it back up to actually surrendering. And that day when I actually surrendered is the day I really became non-stoppable, because I felt God's presence, and I really felt his arms around me saying, hey girl, you're going to be okay. I got you.
Yes.
I got you. And so in that unstoppable, I changed. I became more peaceful. I didn't have the anger or the pain. And when I did, I handled it different. I didn't, if I was angry, I went into my garage, our garage, and I picked up a roll of paper towels, and I banged everything while I was yelling and screaming and releasing and crying. But I didn't do that to my husband. Like before, I was confronting him with that pain, with that anger. And then I stopped after surrendering. I started handling it myself. And I like to say that I always feel, and even to this day, when I still have anger or pain and that I'm holding on to, I feel like God is just watching me, waiting for me to give it to him. He's like, okay, girl, I'm here. You know I'm here. What's taking you so long? Come on, give it to me. Release it. You know you have to release it to feel better. And that's exactly what I did during that time. And that's what I do today, too. I release it. And this image we have of God sometimes is that he can't take it. Boy, he can take it. And he wants us to give it to him because he knows it's not healthy for us to hold on to it. And so, in the days that say I was overwhelmed with pain and wanted to cry, I did it alone. I did it with the presence of God, maybe in my shower, maybe in my room, maybe in my closet. But it was so different than to be in front of my husband being a puddle on the floor, right? And that's where my strength came from. And that was a switch too, is realizing that before I was trying to be all strong. I was trying to control it. After surrendering and doing it different, I learned that I was going to God and letting him be my strength, let him be my guide. It just is remarkable the change that happened in a matter of minutes of surrendering, truly surrendering, and learning the difference of surrendering from, what it used to feel like to write it in my journal and then take it back up, to actually giving it to God and laying it at the feet of Jesus. And so today, Tim and I have rebuilt our marriage. We have restored it. We are stronger. We are better. And I mean, I thought we had a good marriage, but we have a better marriage today. We have learned a lot of tools along the way that has helped us get stronger and become better at communicating, at understanding one another. And also, you mentioned we lead like groups, whether we're coaching with a couple, we also lead at our church, a Reaching Your Marriage group. And it's in those situations when Tim and I come prepared with a topic, a conversation of what we're going to do, that God really shows up. And all of a sudden, it's like we are getting more from what we're teaching than maybe the people in the room, and so that has been a real blessing and reward for us to be able to do that. And then it's the other reward for me is that I work sometimes with just women, not always couples, but just women. And being able to take women and walk them through a devastation in their marriage or even a dissatisfaction in their marriage, and to have them come out on the other side and look at things differently. Not too long ago, one of my clients was, I think she was about 76, long-term marriage. And she called me and she said, it was the first time I ever spoke to her. I'm really looking forward, wanting some information about coaching with you. I said, sure. So we talked through. And her story was that after all those years of marriage, she's just at a point where she's just not satisfied in her marriage and she doesn't know what to do. So part of her thinks she wants to leave, but the other part doesn't. So she wanted coaching. We coached together, and our last session together, she said to me, I want you to know, because of the work we've done together, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here. And what a reward to do that, because here's a person, when we get married, we don't expect a divorce. We expect to be married for life, especially when we're married in a church and Christian faith. And then to have that kind of bubble up in us that might be a possibility, we have to look at everything that we're affecting by doing that. And so for her to say she's not going anywhere, she's keeping her family intact, her children, her grandchildren, and her husband, and they're all able to grow and to be that unity that God wants us to be, instead of a fractured family.
Yes.
So, and the other day, last week, actually, we had our class, Enriching Your Marriage, and we had new couples there. We were so excited to see some new couples come. And we always ask them to tell us a little bit about themselves, And the one couple said, well, we've been married, I think it was 38 years or something, long marriage. Said how many children they have. And she says, we feel like we have a good marriage, but most recently, one of our children is getting a divorce. And it's really affected us too. And I think that's the thing we don't realize, is that the consequences and the ripple effects that it has when we make a choice like that. And so, kudos to them for them coming and being able to acknowledge that and tell people that. But also for, say, the woman is 76 to reach out and get help before she makes a decision. I think often we're either in so much pain or dissatisfaction, or there's been a lot of destruction along the way, that we don't stop to think that it can be fixed. And Tim and I are proof it can be fixed. We don't do it alone. We need to get help, and we need to trust God. And so that's one of the things, I always tell my clients, or a potential client when they call, is that, have you done everything? Have you really done everything to really go through this to make sure you're making a right decision? And so that going through means doing work. It means going through the process, and it means actually getting real with yourself. What's going on with me that I'm feeling this way? And then getting real with God, going to Him, asking Him, what can we do here? Because we know, and you said all things, are possible through God, and we know that.
Yes.
But I just think we often just let our humanness get in there too much, and we make the choice. So for being unstoppable, to me, it requires several steps. It requires, having faith and trusting God. It requires the strength to understand, to get knowledge and wisdom about yourself. We know that, and we know that at AA, which is very successful, right, for Alcoholics Anonymous, is very successful, their program. Well, the first thing they do in there is they have you come in, stand up and say your name and what you are. I'm Diana, I'm an alcoholic. Why do they do that? Because acceptance is the first step in change.
Yes.
So, we need to accept what we're feeling, why we're feeling it, who we are, before we can start to change. And then we got to do the work. And that requires a willing heart. And that's where I think our humanness comes in. Sometimes we're like, oh, this isn't fair. Why do I have to do this? And we want to put those boundaries up that we shouldn't have to. But that's not truth. We have to have a willing heart, and we have to be willing to just do the work. We also know that if we don't do the work, if I hadn't done the work that Tim and I did to heal our marriage, I would have carried that with me into whatever happened. If we divorced, and I probably, most likely, because we know remarriage is pretty high statistic, probably would have remarried, I would have carried that into my next relationship. If I hadn't divorced, I probably would have carried that into my relationship with my children, my grandchildren. And you don't want to carry all of that hurt and pain and stuff with you. You don't. So I believe, and it's not easy, that anything we go through, whether it's betrayal or some other kind of dysfunction, some other pain, some other hurt, we really need to sit back and be honest with ourselves and look at, what is my lesson here? What is it that God can do with this? I never believed that my mess of our marriage could turn into our message, but it did. It did. And, at the time, I didn't look at it as a blessing, but today I do look at it as a blessing. And the blessings, the list goes on, from having the better marriage or the deeper marriage to having our family intact, to being able to work and help others. It's a huge blessing. And I can't imagine my life without it. So, unstoppable doesn't mean that other things aren't going to happen in my life. It just means that I'm going to get up and I'm not going to quit, right? I'm not going to let them take me down, because we know that we don't have control in our life. Other people influence our lives. Other people are making decisions and choices every day that can affect us. But it's up to us how that affects us. Go back to the couple that mentioned that their daughters or their child, and I don't remember if it was a girl or a boy, is getting a divorce. They have a choice. Can we let that affect our relationship? Do I let that affect me, or do I not? So we have a choice in everything that comes around. And I'm going to choose to be unstoppable.
Yeah, Unstoppable is why I asked Diana to be on this podcast. Several years ago, a very seasoned prophet gave Ray and me a word that you are unstoppable. You're like an army tank. And then fast forward to this year, a friend of mine who didn't know about that word, she told me, Beth, you are unstoppable. And she didn't know that that word had already been given to me. But when I saw Diana posting on Facebook about unstoppable, that is why I wanted her on this podcast. The enemy will try to stop us, whether it's through our marriage, finances, health. He'll do all kind of things to try to stop us, stop our faith in Jesus Christ, stop our purpose. And we can't let him stop us. We have to continue to trust Jesus. And Diana and Tim are living proof of unstoppable. Many couples divorce after an affair or after pornography or something like that, but they are showing it can be done through hard work and through faith in Jesus Christ. So, Diana, what do you think stops people the most in their purpose and in their lives?
I think fear stops people the most.
Yes.
We're fearful of the unknown. And so we let that fear stop us and we stay stuck in it. Now, one of the first assignments I do with my personal clients, women, is I have them do a fear doc. And what that means is that I take the fear and I use the acronym face everything and run. And I ask them to make a list of all the things they're they're not facing that they're running from. And then I have them go to the other side to look at the other side. And the other side is the acronym face everything and rise.
No, I love
And
that.
so I say, now you've listed your fears that you're running from. What can you do to rise above that fear, particular fear? And then I ask them, find scripture to support you in your journey. Because we need that support. We
Yes.
need, and that's where you find the scripture that speaks to you about that specific fear that you are running from and now have decided to rise above. So
That's so
that's,
powerful. Face everything and rise. And you were talking a while ago about the word surrender. You said that several times. I don't think you knew this. Surrender is one of my one words for this year. I usually pick one word. God reveals a word to me for each new year. But this year I had two words, which was surrender and believe. And God spoke to me through that. The more I surrender, the more I'm going to be able to believe Him and trust Him. So that word
mhm.
surrender, that was so key to Diana's healing. And it's so important in our journey with God to surrender to Him that His will be done. And we know even though He forgives divorce, it's not His desire. He wants marriages restored. So that word surrender is very powerful. Diana, what else has helped you in your healing journey? What do you think is one of the most important aspects?
I think one of the most important besides surrendering, that was the most important, um, was then to do my own work on me. When there's been something like betrayal or even pornography, you mentioned that, or even, alcohol or drug use eh, from your spouse, there's part of us that believe that it must be something that we did or we're not doing to cause them to have this behavior.
Right.
I had to sit and go, it wasn't me. It wasn't me.
That's
Tim
right.
made the choice, and that was his choice. And I had to let him do his work and not interfere with it. So, not try to control it, not try to fix it, but let him be to go do his work. And I did my work. And, that's really hard because we go into self-protect mode, and that's natural, right? We want to protect ourselves. So how do I protect myself? Well, I fix this problem, but we can't fix someone else. So I had to realize I can't fix him. He's on his own journey. I can go fix myself. And in that, pray for him and pray that God works in him because God can help fix him,
Yeah,
but
that
I
is so
couldn't.
hard. Just giving up that control. If you're a recovering control freak like me, and just surrendering it to God and trusting God with that person, like it was absolutely not you and not your fault. But we also have to remember there was something in Tim, some pain, some hole. Jesus told the people not to judge the woman that had committed adultery. So we have to remember that too. Both of y'all had pain in your hearts, and God wants to heal that pain and heal both of you so that y'all can come together in unity.
Right. And I'm glad you brought that up because that's exactly because Beth, we wrote a book, and that's exactly what we did in our book is that I wanted both sides of the story told. Um, it's easy to write from pain Tim had a little more harder time with it because he's writing from shame.
Mm.
And pain is much easier to write. But when you have to sit and look at yourself and put that on paper, it was hard. It was hard for him. But I actually believe God spoke to me that he wanted the story told from both sides. That
Yes.
there are books out there from the betrayed about the pain, but there isn't, I don't know that there's any out there. I have not found them, let's put it that way, where the man has written or the unfaithful has written about their journey. And so we did. We wrote it. One chapter is mine, one chapter is his, and it's kind of what was going on with us at that time. Um, and I just feel like it needed to be written that way so people could see the other side. You know, I feel really blessed in my healing journey because God, he just kept reminding me that Tim had a side, that Tim was struggling with something,
Mm.
that Tim was hurting too. And you know, that was hard sometimes to accept, right? Or to hear, like, but, but what if he made the choice, you know, kind of, you wanted to say, I couldn't. God wanted me to open my eyes to what Tim was experiencing or had felt or was going through. And so I had to do that.
Now, what is the name of the book and where is it for sale?
The name of the book is Our Journey, Infidelity Revealed, Rocky Recovery, Marriage Restored. It's by
It's a
Diana.
very good book. I read it. It's a very good book. And what I loved about it is Diana was so real and raw in the book about her feelings. Because we can hear, pastors would tell us, or we just know being believers, we're supposed to forgive. Forgiveness is not a one time thing. It can, sometimes you'll need to forgive over and over, reminding the enemy, I already forgave that person. But we need God's grace in order to forgive because we're not God. So we need his grace. And I love how real she was in the book about anger and hurt and betrayal. She just, went through all this gamut of emotions and she talked about that in the book. And I love that. I love how real you were.
Thank you. Thank you. And so the book is on Amazon, or you can get it through our website, which will take you right to Amazon. It's a little easier to find it through our website. I'm going to be honest. For some reason, I have difficulty finding it on Amazon. So our website is www.thejourneythrough.com. And you can find it there. Click on it. I do ask anyone who gets it to please write a review. And
Yeah.
you know how important reviews are. But we had an incident recently, and you know about this, Beth, I believe, that the other woman posted a pretty negative review on the book, throwing Tim under the bus a little bit and bringing back a lot of emotions and a lot of questions. I mean, an affair is a secret. And so you don't know everything. And so she put some things in there that I didn't know if they were true or not. So it opened a door where I had to go and talk to Tim about it. We had to walk through it again.
Trey had to get the paper towels again, too.
Yeah. And, but he was gracious about it. Because when he read it, he was actually shocked on some of the stuff she said too. And but I had to ask, is any of this true? These things she's saying, and he said, no, they're not.
Well, that would be
So,
hard for her to post the review and then you read it. That would be so hard.
yeah, it was very hard. And but that's why I say, if you order the book, please go on and write a review because obviously she gave it a low grade, and we know that for people to find it, and it's better to have a higher grade, right? The higher your grade is on Amazon for your book, your reviews, the more likely it'll come up first on the first search. So, and that's kind of what we have to do. Ask for reviews. I just talked to a potential client the other day, and again, it's infidelity. And I said, well, I suggest you get our book. Um, and so she's gotten the book. She texted me, and I said, okay, and telling me how good it was for her, how much it gave her some. I like to say a bit of peace in the middle of chaos, because
Mm.
there's still chaos going on. But to have just even a bit of peace when you're going through this gives you just hope for the next minute, right? And so she said I was able to get just a little piece to understanding of what might be happening here and what I am doing possibly wrong in this journey. So I was able to say, because she reached back out, please go write a review, you know,
Let's
write a
talk
review.
about that a minute because when somebody has an affair or they're into pornography, we know it's not our fault. But during this whole process of forgiveness, because that's not an overnight thing, did God ever
Mhm.
have you look at your own heart? Because I've had to do this in my marriage with different things and just say, is there anywhere I need to change? Did you ever do that through the whole process, or would you encourage others to do that?
I definitely encourage others to do it, yes, because we know that, especially in a marriage, there's two people.
Yes.
So we are playing off of each other all the time, right? And we come with different personal styles. We come with the way we handle conflicts differently, all of that. So I had to sit back and kind of look at how I, presented myself, say in conflict. I don't like conflict. So conflict would come, I would withdraw. Well, you can't resolve something if you won't talk about it, right? So I had to look at some of my own behaviors, some of the things I was doing, some of the, we all have imperfections, but some of my own imperfections, and acknowledge and accept them and see if I couldn't do them differently. Does that make sense?
Yes. And one of the things that I had talked to you about before, you were talking about the differences between men and women, between spouses. My husband Ray and I are very different. And you had talked about a time when y'all were doing a presentation and he has a different style and way of preparing than you. So would you touch on that a minute?
Yeah, we were preparing for we were going to do a program at church, and we were writing this, and it was a 2-day program. So you're not talking short, you're talking quite a few different processes and things. And so we needed to work on it. And so Tim is a powerful popular, is what we call him. He likes to get things done and he likes to have fun. I'm a peaceful and I'm a perfect. So I like things nice and neat and I like everything calm. So this day we're working and working and he is like biting at the bit. You can tell I'm losing him. He's not going to be with me much longer. I can tell it. And I said to him, Tim, what if you gave me like 30 more minutes and we work on this for 30 more minutes? We really dive into it. And then we can do something fun. You want to go golfing? He's like, okay. And so he was able to give me 30 minutes of committed deep dive work. And then we went golfing. So it's
Yeah, it
learning
like
those things.
procrastination is an issue with couples sometimes, and Ray is very much a procrastinator. I'm not. I want it done now. So those
Mm.
differences can actually drive a wedge between couples. Those little foxes that can spoil the vineyard. So I
And
just
that's
thought that
why
was
we
amusing.
we always start with in our working with a couple, we always start with our personal styles. Because we find that is the number one thing that they need to really understand so they can, then um, it opens a door. Understanding opens a door. So,
Yeah, the little things can become big things. The powerful point of Diana's story, I feel, is that her faith in Jesus, that's what helped her get through this, because this was not easy. She, when you look at Diana, you don't see her as a woman in pain. She looks whole and healthy, but something like that is very hard to get through. So I just think it's so powerful. Their story is amazing. So buy their book on Amazon or her website, leave the review. And if somebody wants to get a hold of you, Diana, if there's someone listening today, a woman or a man that is in so much pain, doesn't have to be an affair. It could be an affair. It could be pornography. It could be whatever it is, addiction. What would you say to that person that's in so much pain and they feel like there's just no hope? What would you say to that person?
Well, we know that there's always hope. God gives us that. So my number one thing is don't, you know, I'm into acronyms. So my acronym for hope is hold on, peace exists. So if you can just plant things like that in your mind, then that gives you that peace for that, just that moment you need it. So planting things that help you, that give you courage and wisdom to hold on a little longer, and get some help. God
Yes,
didn't, God did not, you know, He doesn't want us to go through this stuff alone.
that's right.
That's why there's counselors and coaches and pastors. So we don't have to go alone. You run to Him. Um, there was he was a football player, and then he became anyway, he was a football player, and his wife had cancer. They had 4 children, I think. And he wrote a book after she passed. And the thing that stuck to me is he was talking about their son who was struggling with his mother's death. And he said to him, what I want you to do when you're feeling that way is run to God. Don't walk, run to God. And that's what we need to do. We need to run to our Father. He's there waiting for us. He's always there. It's us that hold back. He's right there. So run to God and get help. Don't try to do it alone.
Yes, that's so good. And also to remember, this is something a pastor friend of us told us years ago. The stakes are high. Because if y'all divorce, it not only impacts y'all and your children and grandchildren, it impacts other people that y'all were supposed to minister to. And so remember that legacy.
Right.
Diana and Tim have a beautiful legacy now, and showing their children and grandchildren the healing power and virtue of God is so
Hmm.
powerful. So remember the stakes are high, and remember that you have a legacy and you want to leave that legacy of love, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And your legacy is what we're here for, right? Um, so, and you did ask how people could get a hold of me.
Yes.
Uh, I did want to mention one thing. I've been the last couple of days in the process of writing a free course program called Unstoppable.
Oh, love it.
So, so that will be coming. And so people can learn more about that by either emailing me. Eventually it will be on the website, but I will be sending out emails to let people know. And so my email is diana@thejourneythrough.com. So just DIANA at thejourneythrough.com.
Now
And
that's
love to hear
exciting.
from them. So
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming today, and be blessed and have a beautiful day or night. This is Beth Jones at bethjones.net. It was an honor to have you on today, Diana, sharing your powerful story.
thank you, Beth. It was an honor to be here.